Well, welcome to another conversation and interview session as part of the Business and Finance stream. It's a pleasure of mine to welcome Katrina Douglas onto here as we spend a bit of time with her, gleaning some fresh insights and learnings from Katrina's enormous experience in entrepreneurship and business. Katrina, you may have seen from her bio, is a wife, a mother, launch strategist, an experienced marketeer, and has been helping people and organizations launch and build legacy-driven projects for the last 14 years.
Yeah.
She's an author and a speaker, and I know I have gained a lot from spending time with Katrina, and I'm sure this next 40 minutes or so will bring great value to you. So welcome, Katrina. It's great to see you today.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
It's really good. Where are you tuning in from today?
Bedfordshire, Luton. So
Okay.
a little north of London, but not too far out.
Can I ask, during lockdown and this surreal time we've had, have you managed to get into any Netflix series or any books that you've been reading?
Yes, Bridgerton was very good. Yep. Bridgerton. Atomic Habits has been fabulous. Really talks about creating systems and small changes as opposed to big goals. So Atomic Habits, tiny changes, remarkable results. It's amazing. Really good book. So highly recommend it.
That's a good shout out there. And I guess what would, just as we ease into some of these bigger questions, just thinking high level at the moment, what would you say has been a big learning for you, professionally speaking, during lockdown?
I think slowing down, that has always been a real challenge for me. So I think just having more balance, and yes, work is important, but just, it's really made me take an inventory and value the relationships that I have and invest more in those relationships. When you can't see the people that you love, friends that, you just appreciate people more. So learning a lot of lessons about balance, taking care of our health, because we so often take it for granted, but we realize in these times how precious it really is, family and friends. And actually, I think it's been good to help a lot of us reevaluate our priorities. So that's probably been the biggest learning.
Okay, so thinking about calling and direction,
Yeah.
and I know there'll be people that have been thinking about the things that maybe God is leading them into. Maybe they've been aware of a fresh passion, or maybe a passion that's been buried due to just busyness of life. But this last 9 months has uncovered space to review those passions again. So just thinking about direction, things that God may be leading people into. I'd love to learn from your own experience. How did you know that God was leading you into the work that you're doing now? And are there any lessons that people could learn from that?
I think a few things, Matt. So I would say when you have that unction, you'll know it. You feel the pull. I would say lean into it, but don't rush it. So often we feel this sense that there's a shift, but we want to get there quickly. And I would say lean into it. God never reveals the whole staircase. He always reveals the next step. So go with it, even if you don't see the full staircase, and trust him. And I think that this is an opportunity. If you are in that space, it's an opportunity for you to really trust God and his direction. And it's a real walk of faith, but lean into it. And if I speak about my journey, I think 5 years ago, I think I always knew that I would leave the corporate space after a decade. I just knew. I can't tell you how I knew, but I just knew. And when that time came, I was offered redundancy, and I was like, oh God, right on time type thing. And I thought I had it all planned out. I'm a planner, that I was just going to leave and it was going to be amazing. And I was just going to be this amazing entrepreneur overnight, because of course I've built a career over a decade. And God completely flipped the script on me. Number one, I felt a real sense of bereavement over the career that I had left. So often we're so in a hurry we see sometimes so much of the bad, or we're such in a hurry to get to the next step that we don't realize that we have to give ourselves a minute to breathe. So that's the first thing. If you are transitioning, allow yourself permission, especially if you're a type A personality and just like goal orientated, just need to go. give yourself a minute to transition. That took me 2 years. And I know that might be excessive, but you just have to lean into that. And the second thing where God blew my mind is I thought, of course, I've been a marketer for however many years. Of course, that's what I'm going to do when I leave. And God was like, actually, no. And marketing is part and parcel of what I do. But he showed me that there was a calling also on my life to almost help people birth their visions as well. That actually my identity wasn't just in marketing, and it wasn't just a job title. Because that's another thing. When God is shifting you, there's this question about identity, especially if you've done one thing for a long period of time. We don't realize how much of our identity is in that thing. And then when that thing goes, we're in this place of, okay, well, who am I? And God, what do you want me to do? And what is the title? And so there's a space where you just have to get free of all that. And just the only title, I remember the only title I had was, I guess, was Child of God. Like I didn't have any job title and, you know, I think you just lean into that and just completely trust God. And I love this. There's many things about this season that I like. And I think it gives, I mean, not to discredit the horrors that are going on. But I think that this is a real opportunity for us to free fall into the will of God and just say, God, because it's so crazy out there. Nobody actually knows what's happening. So use this as an opportunity to really trust God like you never have and seek him for direction. Because honestly, in the times we find ourselves in, he really is the only anchor, the only foundation there is. So trust him. He's known you from the beginning of time. You know, you're in safe hands. So yeah, trust that you'll hear him.
I love that. The images you're painting here with a free falling into the will of God. I love that. And also that he reveals a step at a time, maybe not the whole staircase in one go. I think these are really helpful images. I'd love to know, Katrina, any guidance for people thinking about calling, because calling can be quite a loaded term, and people might think, well, I just don't know what my calling is. And so it can sort of cause people to get a little bit paralyzed, and they may feel like they're not quite hitting what God's calling them into. And just wondered, have you got any advice or tips for people maybe not quite clarified on what, having a strap line or something that they can pin their personal statement to? Have you got any ideas or comments on that?
Yeah, I think just start. Sometimes we over spiritualize things. And who we are meant to be and what we're called to do is in our DNA. An apple doesn't have to try to be an apple, it just is. So I think that you just play to your strengths. Look at what you enjoy. Where are your natural strengths? What do people say about you? In terms of when they think of you, what would they say your strengths are? And, where you excel and how you've maybe, particular strengths that you have. So I think the first thing to do when trying to find your calling is to really understand yourself. Sometimes we don't take the time to really face ourselves and really unpack who we are. What do we like? What do we enjoy? What are our strengths? What are the cues and ideas God has given us over the years, So I think sometimes we think that calling is something out there. And actually, it's already in us. It's been with us since the day we were born. And it's just a case of an uncovering. So enjoy the process. And, our very DNA reveals what we are supposed to do. Like I said, an apple tree bears apples, like it's in its DNA. So who you are meant to be is in you. And it will begin to, come forth as you allow it to.
Linked to this, I've got a question about, just about how much of your experience and maybe as you've observed others on this same journey, how much of it is about pushing into the opportunities, sort of humanly speaking.
That's really good.
But then at the same time, God showing up. Is there a balance we need to be aware of?
Absolutely. I love that question, Matt. And I think we are co-laborers. So there's always work that God's doing, but a corresponding work that we have to do. So faith without works is also dead. And so it's not a case of, as much as we're seeking God, faith is active. It's not passive. So, your calling is not going to drop in your lap. Like fasting prayer is great, but you're not just gonna wake up one day and think, oh my gosh, this is what I was born to do. God gives us clues, but we have to take steps. So there is a leaning into opportunities. For example, with this seminar, or this conference, you've seen that there's an opportunity. People want this knowledge. Everybody has moved to digital. Maybe the church in some areas isn't as au fait in this area. So it's an opportunity, but also there was a calling, a push behind it. Now, it took the two. God gave you an unction, but you had to move on it and do something practically. So absolutely, your faith has to marry with doing, and it has to be a complete leap of faith. Like, I'm sure you didn't know how this was going to work out or how it would, but you just ran with it. And that's what you have to do. When you feel God is leading you in some way, sometimes we overthink things. Just go with it. What's the worst that can happen? And once we're in God, he'll always, even if we take a wrong turn, even if we take a left at some point on the road, he always bring us back right. So we don't have to worry about it. Just go with his leaning. And I think the other thing that I would say about opportunities is that not every opportunity that looks like an opportunity is an opportunity. There's been times and seasons in my life where I've been presented with an opportunity that looked amazing on paper, and I knew it wasn't God. For example, when I left the corporate world, I got cold feet and I took a contract that was very, very well paid. On paper, it looked great. Of course, you should be doing that. I knew in my heart that I shouldn't have been doing that, even though everything about it looked like a great opportunity. So you always have to weigh the opportunity in the context of who you are and what God has called you to do in this season, or what you feel he has. And if you feel something friction, don't ignore that, because not every opportunity, God's ways are higher than our ways. Sometimes what the world calls an opportunity is quite the opposite for us. So just be mindful of that. But you absolutely do have to take action as well as having faith.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, so still just a final question under this heading, calling and direction, and just thinking about personal vision statement, and you've talked about getting to know ourselves. It's a really important part of the process, is discovering who we are. And just wondered if you had any insights into your own experience with clarifying your own direction, maybe even a personal vision statement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a number of things. I think just trusting myself. That's one thing. The other thing is actually spending time with God in prayer. Just asking him, like, the Bible says, my sheep know my voice, and trusting that actually you do know his voice and you can hear him. And also, I've had many amazing people, or not many, but a couple of trusted prophetic voices that have spoken into my life and have helped me navigate that. So, and confirm some things that I already felt. So, for example, I remember someone saying to me that you're like the Tango advert, and this might sound bizarre. You're like a Tango advert, and you're going to pop into boardrooms, but you're not going to stay. You're just going to make an impact and you're going to leave. And immediately I knew that was God, because in that sense, I knew that I would go back into boardrooms, but not as an employee. I also knew that I wouldn't stay because I launch. So that's temporary. I launch and then I leave. So I knew. So along the way, God will confirm, and he'll send people to confirm in various ways. It might not be an overt prophetic word like that, but it might be someone says something in conversation and you know it's God. And God always gives us clues, and he leaves breadcrumbs, and he'll give you confirmation just to reassure you that actually you're on the right path. So yeah.
It's brilliant. I love always your practical insights and tips. Not even tips, this is just lived experience. I love it, Katrina. It's so good. Okay, so thinking about vision into reality, this is your expertise in many ways. And just tell us some steps people need to be thinking about when turning an idea into reality.
Okay. I always say the first thing is the higher you want to go, and that doesn't need to be monetarily or just the biggest that I will say it, and the the impact you need to you want to have, or you feel God is calling you to have, is the deeper your foundation has to be. So we live in a very microwave society, this culture of 6 figures in 6 months. You can just pop up on Instagram and be a millionaire overnight. We live in a very microwave society. But your calling is a gift, is something that, you know, we have to steward well. And so when God has given you that gift and you know what that gift is, we have a responsibility to steward it well. And so we have to lay a solid foundation. And so I have developed a framework to help do that. So I call it the 6 Ps. And again, this is the practical meeting the spiritual. So you now know what you need to do. God has told you, feel confident. Actually, I want to move forward. So there's 6 areas that you need to look at. First is the area of purpose. And that's where, you know, what God is saying to you. What is the impact that you want to work and make? What is the real purpose of this thing? But because we can do many things, Matt, but actually we should be people of purpose. And if it's not aligned with our purpose, we really shouldn't be doing it. So what is that purpose that you want to execute? The next thing is, what is the product or the service or the offering that it is? Because you know, I think that our ministries and our businesses are vehicles to give. And so actually, what are you giving? What do you want to give through this? And that is your product or service. And what I will say is, some people feel there's this friction between the work of God and making money from it. And what I would say is 2 things. Just because you get paid for something doesn't negate an act of benevolence. Because someone is paying you for a service doesn't make it any less good. And I know this is constantly a friction that Christians face. And so as part of that process, you have to ask God, are you calling me to business or are you calling me to ministry? Because if he's calling you to business, then the very nature of business is commercial. It's about making money. And so there is something that if you feel called to business, there is a degree of getting comfortable with that. You know, yeah. So that's kind of the first thing. So the product and what you actually offer. Then the people. Because actually, so often we think that even because God has given us this vision that we have to carry it by ourselves. But no, you know, I think, you know, as Christians, it's very much about community. And, you know, the Bible always speaks about us being one body, many parts. So even though God gives you this vision, you have to ask yourself, who is God calling to run with me in this season? And think about the people that can help you execute this. Like, I love the way you've operated this conference, Matt. Like, even though God has given you the vision, you were like, okay, I need a team. I need people to support me. I need to rally in my community to make this happen. And I love that. And it's the very fabric and nature of Christianity. This is unity, working together to get things done. So who are the people? Point number 3. Number 4 is promotion, because you can have the greatest idea in the world, but if nobody knows about it, then it's just not going to get the traction it needs. And, you know, I think that Jesus was the greatest marketer of all time. I mean, you know, his message 2,000 years later, I mean, the Bible is still the best-selling book of all time, you know. So, you know, how are you going to promote this thing? And you know, there's been lots in this conference about the digital space and social media. So absorb that and think, how can you use it to kind of promote your idea? And then processes. And I'm very passionate about processes. People see it as the boring part, but actually it's the very foundation of things that are sustainable. And God calls us to build sustainably. My core value is legacy. My mantra is, I guess, I believe I'm called to build an army of legacy builders, you know, and, you know, processes are the foundation of anything that is sustainable. So yeah, processes. And then finally, profit. And if you're a business, maybe, yes, financially, but more than that, how is this going to profit those that God has called you to impact? And even in my business, when I think about profit, I prefer to think of impact goal as opposed to income goal. So actually, how many people perhaps has God called you to impact, or because I think that it is good to think about, okay, what is the outcome that we're trying to. So you can see that it's quite a holistic framework, and it really causes you to think about the thing thoroughly, so that actually when you do start building, it's built on a really solid foundation. So I hope that helps.
That's so helpful. Yeah, and this is one of your resources that you've developed, and
Absolutely.
I know there are others as well. Did you have you mentioned maybe a course that you recently developed as well? I think just a couple of weekends ago or something. Just
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, Matt,
something together.
there's so much going on at the moment. I tried to slow myself down, and still I've ended up creating. The Headspace has given me lots of ideas that have kind of, yeah. So there's a number of things. So if you want to, and I'll put these in the Slack group, so please do join the Slack group. So the first thing is, if you want to start planning a business idea out, I have a business planning toolkit. So that includes a video and a template. So you can literally fill out the business plan as you watch the video, and I'll post the links in the Slack group. Also, if you want to start launching, I'm hosting a free launch planning class, completely free, on the 3rd of February, and you can find that at thelaunchstrategist.com. So I think these are the main kind of free resources that I would recommend, and they could really help you get out the gate and get started.
I love it. Katrina, tell us in terms of setbacks.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt you will have confronted some setbacks along the way.
Yeah.
Are they God's guidance or God's training ground? How do you work
Oh
it
my
out?
goodness, what a great question. Both, absolutely both. I think that definitely training ground. For example, I had decided to do a physical event prior to the pandemic. Turned out to be in September. Fortunately, the world was a little bit more open, so I ended up hosting it. But navigating that, when people had paid you money, venue had already been booked, that was a setback. But there was a learning in that, because a year prior, God had told me that Legacy, which is my signature event that I have annually, was going to be intimate and high end. And a year later in the pandemic, I know why he said that. Well, probably not the only reason, but actually it made perfect sense to me. And I guess, yeah, it was one of those things. Again, it stretched my faith, because we're in a pandemic. No one's having physical events. Everybody has cancelled their events. And I'm like, God told me that this needed to be in person. And it was just as they had opened up and then they reduced it to 6 people. And I think I had 6 people that had paid and booked. And so it was just God. So it was absolutely a setback. I remember praying at 3 o'clock in the morning, like, God, I have no idea what to do. But knowing that you told me to do this is crazy, but you told me to do this. So that's a classic example of it being training ground, and also guidance. So yeah.
Great answer there. And that's fascinating, Katrina. And thinking about leadership, we've talked about vision into reality, thinking about leadership more generally. You've spoken a lot about prayer. I mean, it sounds like it's a constant conversation that you're having with God in terms of business and running the things that you're running. What does that look like? Do you have a set routine? Is it something that you try and aim for? How does it work? Or is it more organic?
A bit of both, and it depends on the season that I'm in, to be honest. So at the moment, and I think this was important to me in terms of my balance. So I guess I have quite a regimented routine. So I wake up, and first is a bottle of water and worship and prayer. And so I start my day with God. It hasn't always been like that. It's not always like that. But in this season, that's what it is. I feel like I need to have that dedicated time, because I feel like I'm at a crucial point at where he has me. I'm on a cusp. And so I feel like I really need, and just the season that we're in, I need that dedicated time. I think what's also changed in my prayer life is that I think early on in my walk with God, it was very much like prayer had to be this regimented thing. And there had to be this set step. And now I'm very much in a place of I understand, I think, what God means about praying without season. Sometimes it's just in my mind. Sometimes I'm just speaking as I go. And also, there used to be this thing as if I didn't feel like I was in a good place, or I just didn't feel like I wouldn't talk to God. And now I'm just like, this is horrible. This thought, this situation is horrible, but I'm still going to talk to you because I don't actually have anywhere else to go. And so there is a realness in my prayer and a real kind of unadulterated honesty that hasn't been there in times past, because I think that, yeah, I think part of prayer is multifaceted. It's about listening, it's about speaking, it's about bringing your entire self and facing yourself as well as God, and being, you know, coming boldly to that throne of grace in time of need, and God can handle it all. So that's what prayer looks like for me.
That's ace. Okay, thinking about leading in a pandemic, you've been doing that, been leading, navigating some quite challenging situations and making decisions. What questions should leaders be asking themselves right now as they're right at the front end of 2021 and beyond?
Mhm.
You know, what questions are important that you maybe are asking yourself that maybe
Yeah,
others should as well?
yeah. I think, what is your position in the army of God right now? Because the world needs us. The world needs us. So where do you think God is placing you in this time of season? Because the fact that you are alive, we are alive in one of the most abnormal times in history, and that God would say, I want you alive in this time, season, and dispensation, is mind blowing to me. And I think that you have to realize that God has called you and birthed you for this season. You're not here by accident. So spend time with God and ask him, why, what is the mandate? And expect him to answer you. It might not be all in one go, but expect him to answer you. Also, don't get distracted. I think in this season, we have to be very focused. I've had a number of people ask me about Clubhouse, which I think is a great platform, and I love audio. But I know that right now, there are specific things that God has ordained me to do. And so I cannot get distracted. And actually, I felt a pull to go back to more traditional platforms. Like right now, I'm posting YouTube videos every week. I have started to blog again. I started a blog in 2011, haven't blogged in a couple of years. And all these things that are staple, that are solid, that are consistent is where I feel caught. And that's not going to be for everybody. But my point is that if you feel that God is telling you to do just this, and this can be with social media, even though everyone's saying Clubhouse, but you feel actually, you have to just focus on your lane right now and not be distracted. And I think that that's a real struggle right now. There are so many distractions. And, we spoke about this when we had our conversation about The Social Network, that documentary, so many distractions and fragmented attention. You have to really guard against that and really focus your efforts on and energy in the areas that you think that's going to have the most impact. And I think don't also sometimes where God is calling you to be is not going to be obvious. So for example, right now, God hasn't given me like any big assignment, any new assignment, but it's to be more present at home. It's to eat properly. It's to basic things. And so sometimes we think it's going to be this big thing, and God is just bringing you back to the basics. Like, hang out with your kid and watch her. That's all part of it as well, So, yeah.
I love how you talk a lot about legacy. It's a real word that you keep coming back to and communicate. And why is legacy important? Why should leaders be thinking about legacy?
Because I think that what's that scripture? When actually we leave with nothing, we leave this world with nothing other than really what we impart into others. When you die, you leave nothing. And so for me, it's like life is so precious. It's such a gift. And I think we are gifts. God has given us as gifts to other people as well. And so we have to, for me, the number one question is, what are you imparting? What are you imparting? And I think as leaders, as Christian leaders, it always has to be bigger than just the act of the job or the practicalities of the business. It's like, what are you imparting? And I think that, and for me, the thing that moves me most about my business is when I work with people in those one-to-one relationships, and it's like, actually, we're building something that long after you stopped working with me, there's still going to be residue. And yeah, I think God has given us as seeds to, help. I just think it's so important. And I don't know, I do think that's why I think that, we should be legacy driven, but I don't know why I feel this passionate about it. But yeah, it's really important to me. And I think, yes, it's important.
You mentioned seeds, and I'm often struck by that parable of the mustard seed and the yeast that starts small and then goes on to, as we know, it becomes the largest of garden plants, but it
Mhm.
changes the landscape of the garden. And I love that idea that sometimes we can start this thing, which you're in the business of helping people start new things. It starts
Yeah,
small, but then goes on to, as you say, leave a residue or even change the landscape of future
yeah,
generations, which
yeah,
is something phenomenal that that God wants to lead people into. I know who are
absolutely,
listening to this, and maybe later as well in this
absolutely.
season. It's fabulous. Okay, just thinking about what you would say to your younger self, knowing what you know now.
I know it sounds cliche, but just lean into who you are. I would have done it earlier. I think I love getting older because every year I become a fuller, freer version of me. And I think that when I was younger, there was this fear of letting go, like the real you isn't going to be the right image, or it's not going to fit, or you're just going to be weird. And as I get older, it's just like, yeah, I think lean into who you are. Like we're God has created you amazing. Like everyone watching here, you are a masterpiece. Like the miracle that it took to even get you here. And I think lean into that completely. I didn't do it early, and I'm still trying to do it. But there was this, I guess, a fear in my younger years. So that's what I would say, because that's where your calling is in you, the real
Mm.
you.
Um, I'm a church leader. There may be other church leaders watching this, and they'll have people who are entrepreneurs, innovators in
Mhm.
business in their congregations. What can churches be doing to help Christians in business more, or providing space or support, or what is it that we could be doing to make to work together and champion you guys more?
I think that embracing the fact that the church is more than the four walls and not trying to confine them. Like, we'll always come home, but our remit is beyond the church walls. And I think embracing that, and I think that, you know, being an entrepreneur with a calling outside of the church is no less important than a role within the church. And I think that it's just embracing that, um, the value of entrepreneurs and utilizing them within your organization as well, giving them creative license to help shape your vision. Because I do think that there is a synergy between the apostolic and entrepreneurship. Apostles are builders, and so there's a kind of combining of that as well. So I think just embrace entrepreneurs and give them the freedom to kind of have an impact beyond the four walls.
The Bible has, there's lots to say about business, finance. Just wondered if there's anything that's particularly stood out to you over the years as you've reflected on Scripture.
It might be Luke 14, where it says that anyone who is wanting to build a tower, he first must plan. I can't think, I had it up this morning, I can't think exactly what the scripture, I want to
Luke
share
4,
it.
Luke 14:28. Just Googled it. It's
Yeah,
not.
perfect.
I've
Perfect. Luke
memorized it.
14:28. And I don't know, I've always had this obsession with planning, which I have to temper sometimes, I have to admit. But I think that there's this idea of preparing a field first before you act. And I've always felt that it's important of building and laying a foundation. So that's one. Um, Yeah, I think that there's a scripture in Psalms, I don't know if it's Psalms 1, that says that everything that we touch will prosper, expecting that everything that we touch will prosper, and that God will use us. So I think there's so many, Matt, honestly, that it's a guidebook. Like it's a business handbook in so many ways. And I think that when God has positioned you to be something, you see everything through the filter of that. So when I'm reading the Bible, I'm always reading it through the filter of business. And so everything speaks to me in relation to, it's funny that. Do you find that for you, Matt, sometimes you can turn up anything into a sermon? Like
Oh, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's always on the lookout for illustrations and things that I can
yeah.
use. Absolutely right.
So that's it. It's like everything is skewed to our calling, I think. So yeah.
This is so good, guys. We're coming to a time where if you're here watching us live, feel free to post a question for Katrina to look at and an answer for you. But I've got another question before that, Katrina, and that is, what would you say the landscape, maybe particularly the landscape you're working in, what does it look like in the coming years post COVID, and how are you going? What are the things that you're thinking about to navigate that?
A very practical one. I'm looking at artificial intelligence actually. Yeah. Just I'm interested in where that's going. I think technology is going to go crazy. So we need to be tech savvy for what's coming. Yeah, we really have to be tech savvy. I think that unity is super important. There cannot be silos in the way they've had been in the church. We are one body and we have to function as such. I think it's fundamental. So I think that's the other thing. And I think that we have to reevaluate the way we do church. Like, I don't think that, of course, eventually we're going to go back to our buildings, but I think church as it was is never going to return exactly how it was. And it's embracing that. That's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. And we need community and we do need face to face. But I think that this has been a major pivot point for the church. And I think embracing that and asking what does it look like as church leaders for your congregation moving forward, because it's also a great opportunity. So I think those would be the three things. Yeah.
This is Ace. I am just looking to whether there are any questions, but we may not have any questions, Katrina, beyond what we've been looking at. But I wondered, where can people find you? You mentioned the launchstrategist.com.
Yeah, the launchstrategist.com. I hang out mostly on LinkedIn, so feel free to send me a connection request there as well. And you can also, there's free downloads on my website. And I started this Sunday email actually, where it's like literally just reflections on entrepreneurship from the week, which seems to be well received. And it's really like journalistic style. Like I talk as if you're my pen pal. And that's been received quite well. And sometimes, yeah. So if you want to subscribe to my email list, you can do that and connect with me on LinkedIn as well. So those, and of course the website. So that would be it.
I know you're really active on LinkedIn, and it's so good to see the resources and conversations that you host on there. And if you could have just one LinkedIn live session, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. Just one. I don't know. Okay, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go with one idea, and this is the one idea I'm actually running with. I want to showcase people that have launched successfully during COVID, as a source of inspiration, as a source of practical advice. And I think it would be to demonstrate that even in, that idea that even in any season, you can live out your calling, as difficult as it might seem, as bad as, you watch the BBC News, you think, oh my gosh, we're on the verge of Armageddon, but actually there is hope. So, and I think being, a source of hope, something that would give people hope and yeah, I think hope is important. Like
Mm.
we can still live, we can still thrive. God is still on the throne. So yeah.
Amen. Amen to that. Oh, look, we do have one question that's come in, Katrina. I wonder whether I could ask you before
Yeah,
you
cool.
go. Um, and it's from Sahara, who's actually been hard at work helping us get Stronger 2021 up and running. So it's really great to hear from Sahara here. She says, "Were you scared about leaving the corporate world? What are some of the ways your life has changed since then?"
Oh, great question, Sahara. I wasn't. I mean, everybody at the time, I think I knew the time was right. There was just such a knowing. And I guess that was for a couple of reasons. One, because I feel like it had been something God had been telling me for many years. So it's like, oh my gosh, we're here now, God. So that was that. Also, what made it easier is I had redundancy. So it was like a number of things were in the right place at that point. I had redundancy, so I had a bit of a fallback. And the only alternative for me at that point was to move up north to Gloucester, which wasn't an alternative. So it's like, okay, this is a perfect opportunity. The other thing is, my husband had a good job. So, and I think it's important to share those things, because I know there's a lot of times where people say, just leave. And if you feel convinced that God is saying that to you, then fine. But there are other ways to do it. So don't feel that it's all or nothing. You could maybe switch to a part-time job, or you can maybe choose your hours, but we have to be practical as well. We have to be wise as well. So that was the right thing for me to do, just leave, because of my circumstances enabled me to do that. But I think that, just because God tells you something to do something doesn't mean you have to do it now, and also doesn't mean that we abdicate wisdom. So yes, that's what I would say, Sahara. And there was another part to that question as well.
What are some of the ways life has changed since then?
Oh gosh, what are some ways? I think I'm a lot more chilled. Like, corporate is like, really, you really have to always be on your A game, and I feel there's such a sense of freedom that I have, that is amazing. I think I'm a more present parent. Yeah, because I think when I worked, I traveled a lot as well. And, as much as you try to be present, the fact is I left at 7 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes we wouldn't get back till 6. I traveled most months. And yeah, that was an issue that God really had to address. And as mothers, I'm not suggesting we necessarily all have to be stay-at-home moms, but I think that was really a burden for me, that God was like, you need to be home for your children more. But that's a personal thing. And that's what's changed for me. I've become more present at home. And because of family, our families are our first ministry. So you can be world domination out there, but if our families aren't okay, then it's a problem. So that's it. I've become more present because I really wasn't balanced. So that's that. And I think I would also say, finally, that the business journey is very much a personal development journey. So as I've been building my business, I've uncovered so much about myself and learned so much more about myself, because you have to dig deep to keep going in this entrepreneurial, with any new idea, you really do have to dig deep. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
Katrina, we've got another question that's come in from Ayobami, and he says, you recently posted on LinkedIn that you were stopping your current live sessions. How did you know or become sure that it was time to stop?
Great question. Hi, Ayobami. So I knew because I lost the passion for it a little bit. And I just knew the idea felt like how I was doing them previously. And this is typically how it happens. I felt like, I lost the passion for it. I knew that I still wanted to show up on LinkedIn. I still know that's the platform that God primarily wants me on, but it just didn't feel right anymore. And sometimes, there's a subtle shift that, this was great, but actually there's a shift coming. But I didn't actually know what that shift was. And so in times past, I just would have said, okay, where I would have either continued, even though I know it's not, I knew it, the time had come to kind of end it, or I would have jumped on another idea. But what I did instead is I just stopped. Which, because I'm such a person that, if you're doing this, you have to you can't just stop. You have to keep doing it. You show up every week. That's what you do. But God is kind of freeing me from that. And really, I'm in this space where it's like, okay, what am I telling you to do? And sometimes it might be a sudden stop. And so what I did in that space is I didn't know what God was saying to me. And so I did stop, and I didn't rush and start something else. I just kind of said, okay, I left it for a bit. And I think it was, but in the back of my mind, it was churning there like, okay, what is this next idea? And then it came to me, I think last week or the week before. And I knew I had this idea that it's going to be COVID. It's going to be called, so you're the first. This is an exclusive other than my mailing list. So this is a real exclusive. So it's going to be COVID launch case studies, meet the success stories. And so what it is, it's businesses that have launched during COVID, and they're going to share how they launched. And so again, I'm very much about legacy and sustainability. So these are businesses that have, one of them has just got their health product into Selfridges. Another one has launched a hair care product, and I've got another one has launched an exclusive mentorship. So I've got, so I've got a number of people lined up. And I think I just wanted to do something that was going to be aligned to what I feel called to, but that was also going to inspire people and give people the hope. And these aren't necessarily people that I've worked with. In fact, all of them aren't. Only one of all the 10 that I've listed. But it wasn't about that. It's about showing and demonstrating practically, because sometimes we need to see it, that actually this is not theory. People are actually doing this despite BBC, despite the horror stories, despite everyone saying recession, the economy, and all of this. There are businesses that have launched and are thriving, and I want to showcase them. And businesses that have done it well. So it's not just about this 6 figures in 6 months. It's about this, we're building something solid and sustainable and of quality and of substance. And so I'm going to be using my platform to showcase those people and those businesses. So that's what it is. Ayobami, you've got the exclusive scoop.
That's such a pleasure to hear that and that news. And Katrina, thank you. And we are so grateful to you for giving up your time and
it's a pleasure to be here.
And if you do have any more questions for Katrina, do find her on LinkedIn or on the platforms you mentioned, and ping her a note. But thank you for being with us. And what are you up to the rest of the day?
What am I up to? I'm taking it easy. It's been quite a busy week, actually. So I think I might drink some tea and read my book, to be fair. Maybe go for a walk. I haven't been out today. So yeah, just taking it easy for the rest of the day.
Fabulous. Well, God bless, Katrina. And thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much for having me.